A black mother pulled over at a gas station. She wasn't speeding. She wasn't breaking the law. She was just trying to take her son on a weekend trip. But within minutes, she was in handcuffs. Her child was screaming, and two officers thought they'd made a routine stop, until they realized they'd just arrested the wife of their new police captain. This wasn't a mistake. It was a moment where silence became complicity, where fear spoke louder than truth, and where one name changed everything. Are you ready for this story? Where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? Drop it below, because what's coming next will leave you speechless. Camille Warren didn't believe in rushing mornings, especially not Saturdays. They were sacred, a quiet pause between 5 long shifts at the clinic and whatever chaos the week ahead would bring. But more than that, this Saturday held a promise, a rare day carved out just for her and Jalen. No interruptions, no alarms, just time. The scent of cinnamon toast and eggs drifted up from the kitchen, mingling with faint sunlight that slipped through half-closed blinds. In the hallway, Camille padded softly toward her son's room, coffee cup in one hand, a folded hoodie in the other. Jalen was still sprawled across his bed like a starfish in orbit, one leg dangling off the edge, his cheek smushed against the pillow, breathing slow and steady. A superhero book lay open beside him, half read. Camille smiled. She'd seen that expression before. Peaceful, unbothered, on his face as a toddler after long naps. And now, 10 years later, the softness was still there, but the world was catching up to them, faster than she liked. She leaned over and brushed a kiss onto his forehead. "Rise and shine, buddy. Museum day." Jalen groaned into the blanket. "Is there still time for donuts?" Camille laughed, gently, rhythmically, like someone who had learned to savor sound instead of fill silence. "If you're dressed in 5, you can even pick the frosting." 15 minutes later, the two were on the road. Camille in jeans and a simple white t-shirt, her curls pulled into a low bun beneath a navy ball cap. Jalen sat in the back seat, backpack on his lap, voice bubbling with excitement as he recited facts about dinosaurs from memory. The Spinosaurus had a sail on its back, and some paleontologists think it swam like a crocodile. Isn't that wild? Camille adjusted the mirror to glance at him. "You gonna tell the museum staff all that?" He grinned. "Only if they're lucky." Their destination was the Houston Museum of Natural Science, an outing Jalen had been begging for since spring break. Camille had finally found a Saturday that wasn't claimed by work or chores or exhaustion, and she was determined to make it count. She turned onto Barker Cypress and headed toward the highway, tapping the steering wheel to the rhythm of a soft R&B tune from the radio. Then she saw the gas light blink on. "Of course," she muttered with a half-smile. She didn't like stopping for gas mid-journey, especially not in warm weather with a fidgety kid in the car, but they'd never make it into the city on fumes. She pulled into the nearest Shell station, a modest spot at the corner with 6 pumps, cracked pavement, and the usual mix of minivans, pickups, and sedans lined up in uneven rows. Jalen stayed buckled in the back seat, earbuds in, tablet in hand. Camille exited, sliding her card into the pump reader, lifting the nozzle with practiced ease. Her body moved from memory, the kind of muscle knowledge built from years of multitasking. Fill the tank, scan the lot, count the seconds. She wasn't nervous, not really, but she was aware. Then she felt it, a stillness, a change in the air, that unspoken weight pressing against the back of her neck, the one she'd felt in grocery aisles, elevators, classrooms, a presence that said, "You're being watched, and not kindly." Across the lot, a woman, white, mid-50s, tennis visor, fitness gear too crisp to be earned, stood by her luxury SUV. She wasn't pretending to glance. She was glaring. Camille offered a polite nod, the kind meant to diffuse, to reassure. The woman didn't nod back. She turned slightly, lifting her phone to her ear, murmuring, then glancing again. Camille's spine stiffened, not because of what was said, she couldn't hear a word, but because she'd heard it before, in different voices. "She doesn't look like she belongs. She's loitering. She might be stealing something." It was never about volume. It was about posture, intention, assumption. Camille finished pumping, returned the nozzle to its cradle, and dusted her hands against her jeans. She glanced through the window. Jalen looked up, grinned, then went back to his game. She opened the driver's door. "Almost done, baby," she said. But before she could settle into her seat, a short, sharp chirp of a siren sliced through the lot. Not urgent, not loud, just enough to alert, to claim space. A Houston PD cruiser turned in, coasting past the pumps like it belonged there. Camille froze, not out of guilt, but out of practiced caution. Her breath slowed. Her hand remained visible. She glanced at her rearview mirror, then at her reflection in the window. Calm, composed, brown-skinned, wearing a white t-shirt and faded jeans. That was all it took sometimes. The cruiser parked 2 pumps away. From the driver's side emerged a tall, broad-shouldered officer. His walk was brisk, his hand already resting too close to his belt. His eyes locked onto her like she was a problem to solve. Camille's pulse ticked up. Not a sprint, just a whisper. She reached for the door to reassure Jalen. She didn't want him to worry, but something inside her told her this day, this beautifully ordinary Saturday, was about to change. Maureen Adler didn't think of herself as racist. She volunteered at the animal shelter. She tipped generously. She bought her produce from the Saturday farmers market and once posted a quote from Maya Angelou on her Facebook page. But on that particular morning, as she sat in her spotless Range Rover, she stared out at Pump 6 with a certainty that had nothing to do with facts. Something felt off. The black woman across the lot didn't look hurried. She wasn't yelling or panicking or fumbling with her wallet. She looked organized, calm, efficient. But the SUV was newer. The child inside was unattended. The woman's clothes were casual, not flashy. And somehow, in Maureen's mind, that combination formed a question she believed needed answering. Her fingers tightened around her phone. "I'm probably overreacting," she muttered aloud before dialing. The line clicked. "Houston Police, non-emergency. Yes, hi. I'm at the Shell station off Barker Cypress. There's a woman here. Black, maybe mid-30s. She's at Pump 6, next to a gray Highlander. There's a kid in the car. She keeps looking around." The dispatcher's voice was steady. "Is she behaving aggressively? Is anyone in danger?" "No, not exactly. She's just acting strange. Doesn't seem like the vehicle fits. Maybe I'm wrong, but I felt like someone should check." There was a pause, then the dispatcher replied, "Understood. We'll send a unit to assess." Maureen hung up and leaned back, satisfied. She believed she'd done her civic duty. Not once did she wonder what it felt like to be looked at the way she had just looked. Across the lot, Camille didn't need to hear the call. She'd lived it. She saw the woman the moment she stepped out of the store, the way her stare didn't drift, the way her lips tightened when their eyes met. Camille offered a small nod, a peace offering, the kind of gesture passed between black women in white spaces. The woman didn't nod back. Camille turned toward her vehicle. She adjusted the gas cap, smoothed the back of her jeans with one hand. She wasn't nervous. She was practiced. Her mother used to call it moving like glass. Don't give them anything to hold against you. Not your tone, not your posture, not even your shadow. She glanced at Jalen through the window. He was laughing at something on his tablet, blissfully unaware. Camille let herself breathe that in, his innocence, his temporary shelter. Then she heard it. Not a blaring siren, just a clipped chirp, the kind used to announce presence without panic. A black and white cruiser turned slowly into the lot. Camille's jaw set. She didn't move. Not immediately. Let them come to her. Let them explain. The cruiser parked diagonally across 2 spots. A tall white officer stepped out, sunglasses on, hand resting near his belt. Behind him came a younger man, black or maybe mixed, leaner, more hesitant in his pace. Camille already knew the drill. Inside the cruiser moments before, Barrett had rolled his eyes the second the dispatch came through. Suspicious woman pumping gas. Sounds urgent. McCrae, behind the wheel, kept his hands at 10 and 2. Still gotta check it. Call logs said unattended kid. Barrett bit into the last bite of his breakfast taco. Probably a mom minding her damn business. But he still straightened his uniform before stepping out. Old habits or old patterns. As they approached, Barrett's voice lowered. "Let me take lead." McCrae didn't argue. He never did. Back at the pump, Camille stood with her back straight. She didn't reach for her ID. Not yet. That could be seen as sudden. She didn't walk away. That could be seen as evasive. She just waited. The older officer stopped 3 feet away. "Ma'am, we received a report about a possible safety concern. Can we speak with you for a moment?" Camille kept her tone level. Of course, what kind of concern? The officer didn't answer right away. He was scanning her shirt, her license plate, her wedding ring. The younger one, McRae, stayed a step behind, eyes flicking between his partner and Camille. Barrett finally said, "A caller thought you looked uneasy. Maybe not the vehicle's owner. Child in the back seat. Just checking things out." Camille let out a breath through her nose. So, a woman pumping gas with her kid in the car is a public safety concern? Barrett's tone stayed neutral, but his posture sharpened. "We're not accusing you of anything. Just need to verify a few details." "Then ask," Camille replied. Barrett took half a step closer. "Can I see your license and registration, ma'am?" Camille nodded slowly. "It's in the glove box. May I reach for it?" That made McRae shift slightly. He opened his mouth and closed it again. Barrett didn't flinch. "Go ahead." Camille moved with the deliberateness of a surgeon. No sudden motions, no extra breath. She handed him her ID. Barrett took it, glanced once, and walked back to the cruiser. McRae lingered. His fingers twitched at his side. Camille turned to him. "You have a family, officer?" McRae hesitated. "Yeah." "Then you know," she said. "You know this isn't right." He didn't respond, but his silence cracked louder than anything else in that parking lot. Officer Logan Barrett returned from the cruiser with Camille's license. He didn't hand it back. He held it like a warrant, a verdict, a justification in his fingers. Camille stood unmoved, though every muscle beneath her skin was taut with the effort not to tremble. She didn't blink, didn't flinch. Her silence wasn't submission, it was armor. Beside Barrett, Officer Ethan McRae shifted uneasily. He hadn't said a word yet, but his eyes said too much. They darted, not at Camille, not at Barrett, but toward the growing number of bystanders pausing to watch. The gas station felt smaller than before. The hum of traffic had dulled into a background blur. The silence now had an edge. Barrett's voice finally cut through. "This vehicle is registered under a Darius Warren." Camille responded without pause. "My husband." Barrett raised his brows. "Where is he now?" Camille didn't move. "At work." "What does he do?" She narrowed her gaze. "Again, how is that relevant?" Barrett didn't answer. He looked past her toward the car. "Step away from the vehicle, ma'am." Camille stood her ground. "Am I being detained?" Barrett's jaw twitched. "We're conducting a field investigation." "Then ask your question," she replied. Barrett took a half step forward. "Step away, now." Ethan McRae took a breath. "Logan, maybe we—" "Secure the scene," Barrett said sharply. "There's a child in the vehicle. Protocol applies." Camille didn't move. "My son is 10. He's sitting quietly. There is no threat here." But she saw it coming. The grip to her wrist came fast. Not rough, but not careful either. "Don't," she began. The first cuff snapped cold. The second tighter. Jalen's voice rang out like a siren behind glass. "Mom! Mom!" He slammed his hands against the window. "What are you doing to her?" Camille instinctively turned her head, eyes locking on her son. "It's okay, baby," she called out. Her voice cracked. "Stay in the car." But he wasn't listening. He was crying now, and the sound, raw, piercing, made every person near Pump 6 freeze. A woman pulled out her phone. A man at the register stepped out, brow furrowed. Another called, "Yo, what's she being arrested for?" Barrett didn't respond. He guided Camille away like she was a thief, not a mother. "You're detaining me for pumping gas?" she asked, her voice sharp but steady. "For existing?" "Ma'am, you matched a suspicious report." "Suspicious of what? Breathing while black?" McRae stayed back, visibly rattled. His hands flexed at his sides. "She gave ID," he muttered. "No raised voice, no threat." Barrett didn't break stride. "Let's process her. If it's clean, we let her go." "You're doing this in front of her kid," McRae said. "That's not nothing." Barrett finally turned. "You want to write a memo later, write it. But right now, follow my lead." McRae didn't move, but something inside him already had. They reached the squad car. Camille's eyes never left her son. Jalen had gotten the door open. He was running toward her, barefoot. "Let her go! She didn't do anything!" McRae moved first. He crouched down and held his palms up. "Hey, Jalen, stop, okay? You're okay." The boy stopped only because his tears made it hard to see. "She just wanted to take me to the museum," he sobbed. "Why are you taking her?" McRae knelt lower. "She's not going far. We're just asking some questions." Jalen looked at him like he'd betrayed something sacred. "You didn't stop him." McRae swallowed. "I know." The crowd swelled behind them. Someone was filming over McRae's shoulder. Another man said loud enough to be heard, "That's Camille Warren. She lives 2 streets over." They're making a mistake. Barrett turned around. Back up, please. Everyone, keep distance. Camille stood still, breathing through the fire in her chest. Let my mom go, Jalen cried again. McRae's shoulders sank. He turned slightly toward Barrett. We need to slow down. Barrett stiffened. Do your job. McRae looked around. Cameras, faces, pain. Then back at Camille. I'm sorry, he whispered. Inside the cruiser, Camille sat with her back straight and wrists throbbing. She stared at her own reflection in the window. Saw the boy outside, the people, the phones. She saw the world watching and doing nothing. Then she saw something else. Across the street, a black SUV turned the corner, headlights sharp. The driver's silhouette was familiar, steady, and Camille finally exhaled, because help was coming. But the damage was already done. Camille sat cuffed in the back of the cruiser, wrists burning against cold steel. The vinyl seat stuck to her arms in the rising heat, but it was the weight of her son's eyes that scorched her the most. She could see him, barefoot, trembling, lips parted in disbelief. He was frozen a few feet away, near Officer McRae, who looked like he had swallowed his own voice. Beyond them, the crowd thickened. Phones raised, eyes narrowed. Some looked stunned, others furious. And some looked like they'd seen this story before and had hoped never to see it again. A woman called out, "She didn't even raise her voice!" A man followed. You think this is what justice looks like? Barrett stood beside the cruiser, arms crossed, jaw tight. His eyes scanned the crowd like they were the problem. Inside the car, Camille pressed her forehead to the glass. The metal cuffs dug in deeper as her hands tried to shift. She inhaled, slow and deliberate, but the fire in her chest was growing. Jalen, she whispered, even though he couldn't hear her. Mama's here. Outside, Jalen took a shaky step toward the cruiser. McRae instinctively blocked him. Buddy, he said gently, you need to stay back. Jalen's voice cracked. I want my mom, please. His fist balled. She didn't do anything. You didn't even ask her name. McRae knelt again, his voice breaking. I know. The boy stared into his face. Then why didn't you stop him? McRae didn't answer. He looked away. Another voice from the crowd shouted, You gonna just stand there while he arrests a woman in front of her son for... What exactly? Barrett stepped forward. Back off. This is official police business. The response was instant. No, this is our neighborhood. This is our gas station. That's Camille. We know her. Barrett's eyes flicked to McRae. Control the perimeter. But McRae didn't move. His boots might have stayed grounded, but his convictions were slipping. He looked at Camille, her wrists cuffed, her spine unbroken. At Jalen, eyes red. Then at the man now pushing through the gathering crowd. A man in a dark suit, no tie, a walk like steel. McRae recognized him instantly. So did Barrett. The crowd parted like instinct. Darius Warren didn't shout, didn't wave a badge. He simply walked up and said, Is there a reason my wife is in the back of that cruiser? Barrett tensed. Sir, this is an active investigation. You have her ID? Yes, but you verified her name? Yes. Darius took a step closer. Did you speak to anyone on this block? Barrett opened his mouth, but no sound came. Darius's voice didn't rise, but it sharpened. Did you ask my son if this woman was his mother before you laid hands on her? Barrett faltered. She was non-compliant. She was calm. Sir, You didn't even ask her name before cuffing her, did you? Silence. Darius nodded once, slow, then turned to McRae. Open the door. McRae hesitated. I'm not sure I can. You can, Darius said. You're standing at a crossroads right now, son. You already know which way you should turn. McRae's hands moved slowly. He unlocked the cruiser. The door creaked open. Camille didn't move at first. Then she turned, offered her wrist without a word. McRae unlatched the cuffs. The clink of metal hitting vinyl echoed louder than Barrett's silence. Jalen gasped, Mom! Camille stepped out, knees shaky, but head held high. She knelt as Jalen ran into her arms. I'm okay, baby, she whispered into his hair. Mama's here. Around them, no one spoke. They didn't need to. Phones still rolled, but now the story had shifted. Camille rose slowly. Darius was beside her in a second, steadying her. His hand hovered over her back, not pushing, just there. He looked at Barrett. Badge and gun, now. Barrett blinked. Sir, with all due respect, you disrespected my family, my wife, in this community. You don't get to speak about respect now. Barrett's mouth opened again, then shut. McRae turned away. He couldn't watch. Darius didn't raise his voice. Badge and gun. Reluctantly, Barrett unclipped both, set them down on the hood of the cruiser. The sound they made, a soft thud, wasn't loud, but it was final. Someone in the crowd murmured, "That's leadership." Darius stepped back. "You will not wear that uniform under my command until this is addressed." Barrett looked down. He didn't argue. And Camille? Camille turned to face the people. Her neighbors, her son, her city. She didn't speak, not yet. But the look in her eyes said everything. This wasn't just about her. This was about all of them. And everyone watching. Camille stood in the center of the lot, her wrists newly free, but the weight of steel still clung to her skin. The heat of the cuffs had faded, but not the sting. Jalen held her hand tightly, but his small fingers trembled. He kept glancing up at her, as if to confirm she was real, and not something the officers could make disappear again. All around them, silence thickened. Not the awkward kind, not the uncertain kind. This was the silence of a neighborhood holding its breath, waiting, watching. They weren't looking at Darius. They weren't looking at Barrett. They were looking at her. And Camille understood what they were waiting for. She looked down at her son. His cheeks were still damp, his eyes rimmed with the red of betrayal. He hadn't stopped asking questions in his head, and now they spilled out loud. "Mama, why'd they do that to you? You didn't do anything." Her heart squeezed. She knelt to his level, brushed a curl from his face. "Because sometimes, baby, people don't see what's real. They only see what they're afraid of." He whispered, "But I saw you." That was it. That was the shift. Camille rose slowly, letting go of Jalen's hand. Not out of distance, but to make space for her voice, for all the weight that had built inside her over years, over moments just like this one that never got seen, never got answered. She didn't shout. She didn't flail, but every syllable landed like a hammer against the concrete beneath their feet. "I did everything right." The crowd leaned closer. "I kept my license up to date. I registered my car. I stood still. I answered questions calmly. I didn't yell. I didn't resist. I followed every unspoken rule they say is supposed to protect people like me." She looked around, at the phones, at the faces, at the gas pumps now forgotten. And still that officer looked at me and saw not a mother, not a neighbor, not a nurse, not even a person. He saw a problem to be controlled, and in front of my son, he put steel around my wrists. McRae stood several feet away, his face pale, his hands hanging uselessly. Barrett was still near the cruiser, arms crossed, his jaw visibly clenched. He avoided her eyes. The crowd didn't. Camille's voice didn't crack, it sharpened. This wasn't just about a call. It wasn't just about my brother bringing a folding table to my house. It was about fear, and the fact that his skin made that fear believable. A stranger called it in, and those officers chose her fear over my identity, over my presence, over the evidence of balloons and cupcakes and a child in the back seat. A woman in a floral shirt murmured, "She's right." Someone else echoed louder, "She did nothing wrong." Camille kept going. And my son, he watched. He watched them take me. He saw me turned into a warning. And I have to live with the fact that his 10th birthday will be remembered not for cake, but for cuffs. Jalen had stepped back now, standing beside Darius. But he watched his mother with awe. It wasn't just that she was speaking. It was that everyone was listening. I wasn't loud. I wasn't threatening. And yet I was still dangerous in their eyes because I was visible. Because I didn't shrink. She turned to McRae. "You knew it was wrong. I saw it in your eyes. You didn't stop it. And I understand. Fear silences a lot of people. But silence has never saved us." McRae's lips parted slightly, but no sound came. He looked away. "I'm tired of being the one who has to explain, who has to de-escalate, who has to teach my child how to survive moments that shouldn't happen in the first place." Her voice rose, not in volume, but in gravity. "I am not a footnote. I am not a headline to be buried after the next story breaks. My name is Camille Warren." A teenage girl near the front of the crowd raised her phone. "We got you," she said. "Say her name." The crowd joined her. "Camille Warren! Camille Warren!" A ripple of strength passed through Camille's body. Not ego, not victory. Something cleaner. Recognition. The chant faded, but the phone stayed lifted. More live streams, more videos. A teenage boy held up his screen to show the feed. "Justice for Camille is trending," he said. "Over 200,000 views and climbing." Camille blinked, not from shock, but from release. For years, she had swallowed stories like this one, swallowed them whole because there was no space to let them out, because there were patients to tend to, a child to raise, bills to pay, systems to navigate. But now someone was listening. She stepped closer to the front of the crowd, looked around. "I don't want your pity," she said. I don't want speeches or flowers or promises that fade by next week. She placed a hand over her chest. What I want, what I need, is for us to remember this moment. The next time someone tells you racism is exaggerated, the next time a black woman gets labeled angry just for existing, the next time silence seems safer than speaking, her eyes swept the crowd. Because I promise you I'm not the first, and I won't be the last. Another murmur swept through them. Then a woman shouted, "We're standing with you!" And this time, the crowd didn't just watch, they moved. One man stepped forward and stood beside her. Then another. Then two women locked arms and walked up behind her. It wasn't orchestrated. It wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. A neighborhood rising, a silence broken. And at the center, Camille Warren, no longer just a mother in the background, but a voice none of them would forget. The next morning, the squad room smelled of burnt coffee and tension. Captain Darius Warren stood at the head of the long table, his badge gleaming against the navy of his pressed shirt. His voice, when it came, was calm, but it didn't ask permission. "Before we begin," he said, "no one leaves this room until I say we're done." The officers shifted in their seats. Some looked up, some didn't. Lieutenant Sarno cleared his throat. "We've all seen the footage, Captain. But with respect, emotions are running high." Darius raised a hand, just 2 fingers. It was enough. "I'm not here to debrief a press story," he said. "I'm here to address a failure of judgment, one that happened in broad daylight, one that wore our name on its chest." The room went still. Sergeant Frey, an older officer with 20 years under his belt, crossed his arms. "Barrett's made mistakes before, but we can't let the court of public opinion rewrite procedure." Darius looked directly at him. "This isn't about public opinion. This is about facts. About a 10-year-old watching his mother be handcuffed for pumping gas, for existing." No one spoke. Darius continued. "There was no crime, no resistance, no cause. And when that boy cried out, we said nothing. We let that become who we are." Lieutenant Parks looked up from her notes. "What do you want from us, sir?" "I want accountability," Darius said. "I want every badge in this room to understand that protocol does not excuse cruelty, and that fear is not a substitute for evidence." Someone muttered near the back, "You think firing Barrett will fix it?" Darius's voice was sharper now. "I think pretending this didn't happen will break us." Silence again. McRae sat near the end of the table, eyes low, hands folded. He hadn't spoken since the meeting began, but he looked like a man carrying more than silence. After the room emptied, he stayed behind. Darius didn't move. "Close the door." McRae did. He turned slowly, like every step carried weight. "Sir, I should have said something sooner." Darius didn't respond. "I saw it in real time," McRae went on. "Camille wasn't hostile. She was composed. But Barrett, he'd already decided what he saw." Darius finally met his eyes. "And you?" McRae hesitated. "I saw a woman being stripped of her dignity. I saw a child unravel in the back seat. And I saw myself frozen." Darius nodded once, not in approval, not in dismissal. "You knew it was wrong," he said. McRae's voice cracked. "I didn't stop it." "You could have." "I didn't." Darius walked to the window. Outside, the morning moved on like it always did. Sirens in the distance, sunlight bouncing off windshields. "Do you know what hurts most about that footage?" he asked quietly. "It's not the arrest, it's the silence of every officer who looked away." McRae swallowed hard. "I'm not asking you to be perfect, McRae. I'm asking you to be better." The younger man nodded slowly. "I want to testify if it goes to hearing." Darius turned back. "That matters." McRae took a breath. "And I'd like to apologize to Camille, not just as a cop, as a man." Later that day, Camille sat at her kitchen table, phone buzzing every 10 minutes. CNN, MSNBC, local radio, podcasts. Even a celebrity publicist had emailed her, asking if she'd consider doing a public interview about the experience. She'd read the word 3 times, experience, and closed her laptop. Jalen was upstairs. Darius had sent an officer he trusted to pick him up from school. The boy hadn't let go of her hand that morning until he saw her standing beside the car. She stared at the screen again, then muted the phone. She wasn't ready. The door creaked. Darius stepped inside, dropped his keys in the bowl by the counter. The mayor called. Camille looked up. "He wants to show unity. Photo op, you, me, a podium." She snorted softly. "He should have shown up yesterday. He's worried about the optics." She arched a brow. "The optics? A child watching his mother get arrested for breathing?" Darius didn't respond. After a beat, he asked, How are you holding up? She didn't answer right away. Everyone wants me to speak, she said, to tell the story, but it's already out there, isn't it? He nodded. Your voice matters. Camille's tone softened. I just want to protect Jalen. Darius leaned against the counter. Then maybe that's the story. She looked at him. You stood in front of your son and showed him that dignity doesn't vanish when someone tries to take it from you, he said. That matters more than any headline. Camille closed her eyes. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but for the first time since yesterday, she felt something near her ribs ease, like a knot slowly loosening. And tomorrow maybe she'd speak, but tonight she would rest. The hearing room was quiet, not courtroom quiet. Worse, the kind of silence that presses against your chest, like waiting for a verdict no one wants to say out loud. Captain Darius Warren stood near the center, arms folded, eyes steady. This wasn't about hierarchy today. This was about truth. Barrett sat across the room, back straight, jaw set, hands locked tight on his knees. Not in defiance, more like denial trying to hold its last breath. McRae sat beside the Internal Affairs Board, palms flat on the table. His face was pale, eyes darker than usual. He looked like someone who hadn't slept much, because he hadn't. The lead investigator cleared his throat. Officer Kevin McRae, do you understand that your statement is being recorded and may be used in formal disciplinary action? McRae nodded. Yes, sir. Proceed. McRae took a breath, then another. The call came in as a possible break-in. I was in the passenger seat. Officer Barrett was driving. When we arrived, we saw Mrs. Warren at pump 6. Her son was in the back seat. A black male, later confirmed to be her brother, had just walked away from the vehicle toward the store. He paused. Barrett approached first. He didn't announce himself. He didn't ask for ID. He grabbed her wrist before she could explain anything. Did she resist? No. Did she shout, act violently, or pose any physical threat? No, McRae said, quieter this time. She was calm. She asked to explain. Barrett didn't listen. The investigator looked up. And you? McRae's voice faltered for a second. I froze. He closed his eyes. I saw her looking at her son. She knew what was happening, and I didn't stop it. I let it happen. He looked toward Camille, seated behind the divider with folded hands and unreadable eyes. I let it happen, he repeated. Barrett shifted in his seat, but he didn't speak. The door opened near the back of the room. An older woman entered, Mrs. Linda Wallace. Her cane tapped lightly as she walked toward the front, holding a tablet in one hand. Excuse me, she said, voice clear despite her age. I have something to submit. The board exchanged looks. Linda continued. I live across the street. My security camera faces pump 6. It captured everything. She handed the tablet over. The video played on a muted screen. No one spoke as they watched. Camille standing beside her car, looking confused but calm. Barrett storming forward, his hand gripping her wrist before a word was spoken. Jalen screaming in the back seat. McRae watching, still. Camille's voice, clear, steady. This is my car. This is my child. I live here. The board paused the footage. No one moved. Darius broke the silence. Now you've seen what we saw. No dramatics, just fact. The investigator nodded slowly. In light of new evidence, and he said, we will be recommending Officer Barrett for immediate suspension, pending review for termination. Barrett flinched. And Officer McRae, the investigator continued, your failure to intervene will be addressed under supervisory negligence guidelines. However, your testimony has significantly aided the investigation. Disciplinary action will be reviewed accordingly. McRae bowed his head. Understood. That evening, Camille stood in front of a small crowd at the community center. No press, no flashing lights, just folding chairs and neighbors. Jalen sat in the front row next to Darius. The boy's eyes hadn't left his mother since she stepped to the podium. Camille adjusted the microphone. I didn't come here tonight to retell what happened, she began. You already know. Murmurs of agreement. I came here because I know what silence feels like. I lived in it yesterday. I've lived in it my whole life. She looked around. We are taught to obey, to de-escalate, to survive. But no one teaches us how to heal. No one shows us how to speak once the cameras are gone. Someone whispered, "Amen." So I'm speaking, not to be the story, but to make sure the next mother isn't. Camille glanced at Jalen. My son asked me a question yesterday. Why did they take you if you didn't do anything? She took a breath. I still don't have an answer that makes sense. But I know what he saw, and I know what you saw. Her voice grew firmer. You saw what injustice sounds like. It sounds like quiet compliance met with violence. It sounds like a child crying while his mother is told her calm isn't calm enough. She paused. But today, this is what justice sounds like. The crowd was still. It sounds like testimony, like someone finally stepping forward, like a neighbor sharing her truth, like a room full of people saying, enough. Yet there were no cheers, no chants, just a wave of people rising to their feet. In acknowledgement, in solidarity, in reverence. Camille stepped down. Jalen met her halfway. You sounded like a superhero, he whispered. Camille smiled, blinking back the tears. No, baby, she said. I sounded like a mother. The headlines faded faster than the bruises. In another state, another tragedy took center stage. Screens scrolled on. Cameras moved elsewhere. But inside the Warren household, the weight hadn't lifted. It had changed, grown quieter, deeper, more personal. Camille sat at her desk, light from the screen casting pale reflections across her glasses. She didn't pace, didn't speak aloud, just typed, erased, typed again. She hadn't agreed to interviews, hadn't answered producers, journalists, influencers begging for a moment, a quote, a reaction. But this wasn't silence. This was rebuilding. On the screen, a blinking cursor waited. My name is Camille Warren. I'm a nurse, a widow, a mother. I did not shout. I did not resist. I did not run. And still, I was detained because someone didn't recognize me, not by threat, but by color, because someone thought my presence required permission. She paused, then added one final sentence. Justice doesn't arrive with cameras. It shows up when no one's watching. She clicked submit. The piece, my son's birthday, my name, and the silence in between, spread like wildfire. By sunset, it had over 1 million shares. College students quoted her in protests. Teachers read excerpts aloud in classrooms. A black mother in Chicago printed it out and taped it to her refrigerator. But Camille didn't watch the view count rise. She stood at the window, coffee cooling in her hand, staring at the slow, gold curve of the sun falling over Willow Creek Lane. At the precinct, Darius held a copy of the updated policy manual. He didn't speak until every officer was seated. This isn't a suggestion, he said. Effective immediately. Body cams must remain active from approach to departure. Every call, every stop, no exceptions. No one interrupted. Some looked down. A few nodded. He continued. If your partner violates procedure and you say nothing, then you violated it too. Murmurs shifted like dry leaves across the room. One officer raised his hand. What if your partner's a sergeant? Darius's reply was firm. Then it's your duty to speak louder. He scanned the room. We are not going to be the kind of department that protects silence and punishes truth. That ends now. In the back, McCrae lifted his head. No longer hollow-eyed. There was something steadier in him now. A weight acknowledged, not denied. Later, when the briefing ended, a rookie named Ellis approached Darius quietly. My sister read Mrs. Warren's article out loud to my family last night, he said. My dad cried. First time I've ever seen him do that. Darius looked at him. What did he say? Ellis swallowed. He said maybe. Finally, someone put into words what we were never taught to say. Camille stood on the porch, arms folded, watching Jalen scribble something over a piece of cardboard on his knees. He worked with intent, tongue between his teeth, marker staining his fingers. The wind tousled his hair. His back was straight. What's that, baby? She asked gently. He turned the sign to show her. My mom belongs here. The words leaned unevenly, letters a little wobbly, but proud. Can I put it on the lawn? He asked. Camille felt something gather in her throat. Not pain. Something else. Yes, sweetheart, she said. That's exactly where it belongs. Jalen planted it himself, 2 steps from the walkway. He adjusted it twice, then stood beside it with his chest lifted. A passing car slowed, then honked twice. Jalen beamed. Camille stepped inside before her tears slipped. At the community center, a youth group printed Camille's essay and stapled copies to the bulletin board. Someone lit a candle below it. Another left a note. I saw what they did. I see you now. Across town, someone spray painted justice for Camille on a brick wall. But someone else didn't wash it off. They outlined the letters in white paint instead. McRae sat alone in his apartment that night, staring at his badge on the counter. He thought of the first day he wore it, how his father had said, "Son, make sure it means something." He'd failed that once, but not again. He opened a new document. Title, The Day I Froze. He didn't know if he'd send it, but he knew he had to write it. Darius sat at his kitchen table, shirt sleeves rolled up, late-night files scattered before him. Camille joined him with tea, sliding a plate of still-warm cornbread across the table. "You're working too much," she said. He smiled. "Progress takes paperwork. Progress takes people." He nodded, reached for her hand. "I'm grateful you never stopped believing this badge could be something more." Camille looked him in the eye. "Only because you never wore it like armor." Later that week, the city council requested Camille speak at a town hall. She politely declined, but she sent a letter. It wasn't long. No statistics, no emotional appeals, just one sentence. What happened to me was not an exception. It was a mirror. The letter was read aloud, and it echoed in the room long after the microphone went cold. On the morning the sign faded in the rain, Jalen made another, this time with markers and paint. Camille found him at the porch, brow furrowed in determination. "What are you making now?" she asked. He grinned. "A bigger one." He held up a new sign, covered in color. "My mom belongs everywhere." She laughed through a tear. "Yes, baby, she does. Justice doesn't always arrive with sirens. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's cardboard. Sometimes it's a child watching his mother not just survive, but stand taller. Sometimes it's the badge that got heavier the day someone wore it with both truth and regret. And sometimes it's a name, spoken, written, remembered. Not as a headline, not as a lesson, but as a legacy. Her name is Camille Warren, and she never needed permission to exist. She needed the world to finally see she belonged here all along. Thank you for listening to this story. We know it wasn't easy, because truth rarely is, but stories like Camille Warren's matter. They remind us of the voices that get silenced and the courage it takes to speak up. How did this story make you feel? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, please don't forget to subscribe, share, and help us bring more truth to light. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, stay aware, stay brave, and stay connected.